Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be showing you how I make my flashcards and my mind maps. This video has been so long awaited, and every single study with me I make, I always want to explain it, but I never really have the time within the clip to do it properly. So I decided to do a whole separate video on it, on my flashcards and my mind maps, because they are both two very useful revisions resources in my opinion. I was going to show you how I make my notes, but I feel like it's really subjective and it depends what subject, what sort of person you are, so I'm putting that on the back burner for now, but I've decided I'm going to show you how I make my mind maps and my flashcards. And this video is also in collaboration with one of my really good friends here on YouTube, Laura. I'm sure you guys know who she is. If you don't, you should definitely watch her videos. Her videos are very similar to mine, just a lot more aesthetic, and her photography is way better than mine. She's just such a nice person. Like, you guys will definitely like her channel if you haven't seen it already, so it should be in the description. And she's doing a mind map video as well, so I definitely recommend you guys going and watching that. That being said, I'm going to show you how I make those two types of revision resources. So I'm going to start off with flashcards, and I actually never made flashcards until A-levels because I felt like mind maps were best for me for GCSE, but I am doing flashcards for two subjects, for psychology and for history, and I store them in these little shopping bags because I just think it's quite a cute way of storing them, and it does store them quite well. And I feel like the way you make humanities flashcards is very different to the way you make scientific flashcards, like psychology or science, so I'm just going to talk to you about both types. I also want to quickly mention the difference between cue cards and flashcards, because these are flashcards, so these are a summary of information, and cue cards you use as cues to learn facts, so say you'll put a question on one side and an answer on the other, so that's a cue card, and a flashcard is more like a summary of the content, like what I do here, and I'm going to show you those in a bit, so obviously you will understand. But yeah, these are the flashcards which I use. These are the Sylvine record cards. You can buy them for £1 in Wilko's, so I'd recommend these. They're quite big and they're not coloured, so they're not too distracting, and they're cheap, and I mean, what can go wrong with these? Those are good. I'd recommend these, and they're a good size as well to get a lot of information on. So these are my history flashcards. I've got some for Germany and some for the Russia here. I don't know how much I would recommend flashcards for A-level history because there's just unlimited stuff you need to know really, but for like flashcards about the textbook, I think they're good, and they're definitely good for GCSE history. I'd definitely recommend flashcards for GCSE, but I'll just run through a review the system that I use. I haven't made history flashcards since December, so I'm extremely behind on these. I don't know if I'm going to still do them, but I thought I might as well just show you them. I think I prefer mind maps for history, so these are the best ones I think. So we have 4 sections in the textbook, so I have basically a set for each. So these are the agriculture, industry, economy flashcards. So basically for each page in the textbook or each chapter in the textbook, I will get my class notes or just the notes that I took from the textbook, and I will summarise them onto here. And in each chapter there's loads of subheadings, so I make a list of all the subheadings here, so if I do want to test myself on these, I can read these subheadings and see what I can remember from them. And here I wrote the name of the chapter, here I wrote the chapter as well, so 2C.1, and then on the back I just wrote all the information about that stuff, and it's very summarised. There's lots of abbreviations and arrows, and I highlighted important stuff, and then I used a different colour to show the titles. So basically that section there is about that big in the textbook, but I've summarised it to 2 lines of stuff that I think is important, stuff that I would include in an essay, because you've got to remember history is an essay-based subject, so I don't really need to remember facts in the same way. So yeah, I guess that's how I do history flashcards. I'll show you some more examples. So that is that, I guess. And you can see the part of it is changing. The chapter changes as I go through, and some are bigger than others. I try and cram as much information onto one flashcard as possible to summarise it as much as I can. And if I don't understand what the information on the flashcard means, I can go back to my notes. And then this was stuff on the government and the communist control, so this was in a different colour. So yeah, that is kind of how I do my flashcards, and obviously you'll have seen in a lot of my videos how I do them. These ones were actually made in the 1 week study with me I did back in December, so if you want to see these being made, I definitely recommend going and watching that video, and I'll try and remember to link it down below. As you can see, I have a lot of flashcards for psychology. Psychology and sciences in general are really good with flashcards, and as you can see, it's basically my preferred way of revising. So I use these as flashcards as opposed to cue cards. So these are all my research methods flashcards, and I'll show you these and some of these ones because these are done a little bit differently. These are my social influence. These are my attachment, and so is this, and then this is the start of the memory ones, and I did these in a study with me as well, which was uploaded last Sunday, so you should go and watch that. I can't speak. Yep, and I do have some more of these, but they're at my dad's house. So these are my research methods flashcards. I'll just show you the ones for experimental design. Okay, so I write the title up here, which is research methods, so that's the chapter within research methods there, which is experimental designs, and then this is the title of the flashcard, so what that flashcard is about, so that's about the matched pairs design. Here I write down what is on the other side of the flashcard, so I've got the definition of the matched pairs design, the advantages of using it and the disadvantages of using it, and on the back I basically wrote that, so I've got the definition here, the advantages of using it, the disadvantages of using it, and psychology is kind of a lot of disadvantages and advantages, so you can see on this one as well. Yeah. On the back of this I have a load of random sticky notes attached to it, which I was using as very last minute revision, like an hour before my exam, but I will show you some of these. Okay, I'll show you Milgram. So for psychology, you have your procedure, your findings, and your evaluation. So I just wrote the procedure here, obviously, and it should say social influence there, but it doesn't. And then the section of social influence there, and then just basically what is on the other side of the flashcard, as you've seen. And then I wrote it all here. And I highlight the stuff that's important. So this is summarised, kind of. So this is all the main points that I'd want to remember, but not necessarily write all of them in an exam. But for psychology, as it's very specific about what you have to say to get marks, I do have to write quite a lot, but I've highlighted all the stuff that's important, that I really can't forget. And then this is just a bit extra down here, which I probably wouldn't write. And in your findings, these are really important in terms of percentages, so I've got all my percentages highlighted here, once again, basically the same as the last one. And then for my evaluation flashcard, same as before, but empirical support and valuation, so I wrote all my empirical supports here. So for each support I will write whether it's a support or a criticise, and I will write why, and then I will write who did it and what they said. And then I can link them up if I want to. This is fairly old. Well, I mean, it was made in December, but it's quite old in terms of how long I've been doing A-levels, so it's not my best. For smaller studies, I'll just cram it all onto one flashcard. So that's the procedure, that's the findings, and that's the evaluation. And as I get better at psychology, I don't need to be as elaborative on my evaluation because I can kind of do it anyway because it's all in my head, and it's on other flashcards, so I just write a little bit. And that's one of the smaller studies, and then for a bigger study I'll still do as much as before, so I'll write the point, I'll write whether it's positive or negative, and then I can link them up to contradict each other, so that's what that arrow there is doing. And the way in which I use these is basically I will just read through them, I'll read the title, the front page, and then I will test myself on it, I'll say it out loud, and then I'll turn over to the back and see what I missed. And here I was writing everything that I missed and all things that I thought I could miss. So I did this like the morning before an exam, so I would recommend doing that as well. So that is basically it in terms of flashcards. So I guess it's different for every subject. Science would be done more in the way that I did psychology, whereas history would be done, like humanities, more the way I've done history. Things like maths I don't think you need to write flashcards for at all really, because it's more of a skill. And as I said earlier, Mindmaps is my preferred way of revising subjects like history. I did try flashcards and I liked them, but not as much as I liked Mindmaps. and I've done my maps literally forever. I've got my A-level ones in this, I've still got my GCSE history ones in here. These aren't as complex because they're just like that. They're not very complex because GCSE didn't actually have to know that much. But I've got these anyway. I used to do them for science as well, but I wasn't keen on them for GCSE science. But I really like them for history. And I'm going to show you my A-level history ones right now. So these first 3 mind maps here, they all look different aesthetically, but they all have the exact same system. So we have cause questions, so what's the biggest cause of the creation of the GDR, for example. So I just mind mapped a load of different causes, and then I can get an essay question on this. It'll ask me about one of the causes and I'll talk about that cause, and then I can talk about all the other causes, which is the same for this. So causes of the Berlin Wall, so I've got all the causes here, and all the causes of the June Revolt, and all the causes are written in a different style. So the main bit is obviously in a bold, so it's usually in some sort of highlighter with some shadowing because I quite like shadows. And then I have I have my titles in this with calligraphy. Here I have it in calligraphy highlighted, and here I just have it written in a different colour, which is so much easier, to be honest. And then I'll just write all my information around the little titles, and I'll highlight the important stuff. And sometimes I will add analysis onto my mind maps as well. So for example, the stuff that's underlined here in pink is analysis, and the stuff that isn't is just content. So for content, I started making mind maps on chapter 2. So I have all my mind maps here. So here I just up here write the pages in the textbook so that I can make sure I've covered everything. I'll write the topic and then the subtopic, the name of it, and yeah. So I just write the bit in the middle, which is the title of that section, and then I'll just write titles for those, the subheadings in the book, and just write a little bit around it, and obviously I'll summarise it. And these go off into even smaller subtopics. So for the opposition to the Berlin Wall, I have about the strikes, and then I write about petty strikes, other stuff here basically. And the same with this. So this is a bit more, it looks bigger and scarier, but it's not. So I have all my subtopics here, and then I've linked them up a bit because these two kind of link. I've separated them with blue lines because it's quite a lot of information, and this is kind of a chronological one, and when I have a chronological mind map, it always goes around like that. It starts in this corner, goes around like that. I have once again my topic and my pages here, and the name of it, I had to shorten it a little bit because it was not going to fit. And then I write facts and figures in here, for example, and I split this section off into even smaller sections for each weakness of the policy. This one is not so big of a mind map because it's a smaller section, but this is just about Comic-Con. So I've got this here, which is a reference as I've shown. So I've put a little thing about the issues of Comic-Con, and I've circled the main issues, and I've extended them with mind maps. And I've linked it up because that was also an issue, but that linked to that. So that's the issues with it. That's basically what it was. That's what its aim was, and that's about how well it worked, I guess, and I've extended it up there. Same with this, looks a bit different, basically the same as before. And here, this is a very big mind map. This is about the national identity. This was a whole chapter in the book, so this was topic 2.2, and national identity, page reference. So I've done about TV, about the interpreting of history, sport, maths participation, and I did a little conclusion here which is useful for essays. So this is basically the analysis and the explanation of how well it worked, and then I've got a little section here on why it was used. So I've got all my content in these little sections here, and then I've got my kind of analysis in here. And that is about it, to be honest, in terms of mind maps. I've got some more to make, so I'll show you me making them. These are some other mind maps I have. I've got a little cat sticker on that one, because why not? I feel like mind maps, you kind of just do it, and you see how it turns out, and you don't have to have like a system, just some sort of organisation. The only thing about mind maps is obviously worrying about space, so I do try and concise things down and use arrows and stuff like that, so yeah. So I always have the textbook out while I'm making a mind map so that I know that I've covered all the sections and I can make my references, and I use the textbook headings to header the branches of my mind map. So for each like subtopic of a chapter, I will use the subheadings in that mind map. And I do make notes off my class notes for the mind map because they're already summarised, but as I am going through and making the mind map, I will just read the textbook to check that I haven't missed anything important that I didn't take note of for whatever reason, or if I didn't originally take notes from the textbook. And as you can see, I am filling it out, and I've got a few different sections. So I did the middle section in the red, and then I'm spreading it out with all the little sections of the subtopics around it in the other red pen, if you get. So you just saw me making this mind map here, and I used the textbook there just to make sure that I was getting all the right points, but I wasn't writing from the textbook, I was just writing from my notes and just making sure that I had everything. But as you can see here, I've got the contents here, so I did about 4 pages worth of the textbook, did all of topic 2.3, and then I wrote the title of the topic and then what the topic was about. So I did all the background here, and you can see that I underlined the main points coming off the background in that pen and quotes in that colour, and I separated the sections with the pink pen as I have before. Then I did the process of Ostpolitik, so all the main points are once again underlined, and any keywords or whatever are written in a different colour. And then the effects, I did exactly the same. I separated it. I separated all the subsections as well. So I've got all the subsections of the effects, and I've got all the stats about each effect. So fall of Ulbricht, economic effects, travel restrictions, and the sale of political prisoners. And they're all separated with dotted lines, as you can see. And that is about it. And then in the corner on this sticky note, as I've run out of space, I just put the conclusion, and obviously I can just peel it off. And I quite like the sticky notes, it makes it stand out. And yeah, that is basically it. That's how I do my mind maps. All my mind maps kind of follow this format. It might look different aesthetically, but they all follow the same format in terms of what's on the mind map. I use different colours every time and different kind of things, as you saw when you saw my other ones. But yeah, that is basically it. So now I've just filed it all away and I've stuck the sticky note on the outside. And that is basically my mind maps. I'm losing light, but I hope you guys found this video useful, seeing my mind maps and my flashcards. I hope you can try it out and that some of these tips are useful for you guys. Remember to watch Laura's video, and with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon for a brand new video. Bye!